Good afternoon. Welcome to this session of our 2024 Risk Management Conference, Navigating Roof Risk in Multifamily Housing. We have with us today Nate Gillette. Nate has more than 2 decades of experience in architecture consulting and construction, focusing on the multifamily housing industry. He holds a master's degree in architecture from Savannah College of Art and Design, as well as a bachelor's degree in architecture from Lawrence Technological University. Um, Nate is the president of Natura Architectural Consulting. He is also a LEED, stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, as an accredited professional and certified energy manager. Nate is licensed in 7 states as an architect and has completed thousands of property condition assessments across the country. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Nate to facilitate this session.
Thank you, JB. As JB said, my name is Nate Gillette. I'm glad to be with you all today. I'm an architect by training, and I don't design on a day-to-day basis anymore. But our firm, that's our architectural consulting, does property condition assessments on buildings all over the country with a strong specialty in multifamily. So we have seen just about every issue that you can possibly imagine in roofs, and we're happy to share a little bit of that knowledge with you today. So today I'm going to go through a description of some of the more common roofing materials that we see on multifamily properties. We're going to talk about some of the issues that we see that are fairly consistent across the board. We're going to talk a little bit about how you can inspect and do some preventative maintenance on your own with roofing, and talk about when you may need to call in a professional. And then we're also going to talk about some proactive maintenance strategies in the end, and also we'll touch a little bit on some emerging building technologies, including green roofing. So with that, let's start. The different types of roofing that we see on multifamily properties. Roofs basically come down to one of two types. We either have pitched roofing or we have a low slope roof. And when we're talking about pitched roofing, the majority of the time we are talking about asphalt shingle on a property. There are other materials that can be used for pitched roofing, including slates and wood shake. However, those typically are more single-family home materials and not found so much in the multifamily world. A lot of times you'll hear the term flat roofing, and that is a little bit of a misnomer. You absolutely want your roofs to have some slope for drainage. So technically, the correct term that we try to use is low sloped roofing. And there are a variety of different materials that can be used in roofing on a low sloped roof. This is one type of a system called a built-up roof, or sometimes it's just shortened to BUR. But as you can see in the little diagram on the right, it's actually just multiple layers of a tar-based paper that are laid down and then hot mopped with tar, and then another overlapping layers are laid on top of it. You're actually building up those layers of the roof. Very good, very durable roofing system, particularly here in Michigan, where I'm from. But it is a little bit labor intensive and a little smelly to install that tar. Gets a little stinky. There are some rolled roofing materials that we see, and instead of mopping a tar on the back of this type of material, this kind of comes with a bituminous material already on there, and they'll take a torch, as you can see in the photo here, and they'll start to melt that tar a little bit, and that's what causes the roof to adhere down. A little bit cleaner type of a roofing form material. Also fairly durable. but not as many layers are needed. For a long time, kind of the king of low sloped roofing has been EPDM, or what you might hear referred to as rubber roofing. EPDM is actually a chemical makeup, but these are essentially rubberized roofing components. And they can come in a couple of different styles. The picture that you see on the left is what we call a fully adhered system that's glued down to the substrate underneath it. In the picture on the right, you'll see what we call a ballasted system, and that's where the membrane is laid loose, and then a rock ballast is then used to hold it down on top. I'm not the biggest fan of ballasted roofs in the world. It makes detecting roofs and doing maintenance a little tough, but they are quite prevalent out there in the world. We also then start to move into some of the plastic membranes that are out there, the most common of which are on the left, we have what's called a PVC roof, which think of a pool liner. The same material that would be used for a pool liner can also be used as a roofing membrane to keep water out. Very common that we see. More so in the last 20 years, we've seen a rise of a different type of a roofing. The roofing on the right is what's called a TPO, thermopolyolefin is the chemical makeup of that. They're very hard to distinguish between the two. They look extremely similar. It takes a roofing professional in order to really identify which one that it is. But more so that we've seen over the last 20 years, TPOs kind of come to a rise of different. So those are the different types of roofings that you are likely to see in today's multifamily environment. Now I'm going to move a little bit into pretty well the most prevalent roofing issues that we see when inspecting a roof. First off, the obvious one, a roof leak, right? If we have a drip or if we have a discoloration in a ceiling or a ceiling tile, we know that we have something going on up above. And honestly, by the time that you see a leak, it's a little late. We should have probably been doing some better maintenance down the road, but sometimes it can pop up and surprise us a little bit. The big hazard with roof leaks is that if we leave them untreated, water continues to leak into the structure, we start moving into having structural damage. Wood will start to rot, or we start to get into having mold and moisture issues in a building, which can start to be human health risks. So those are the big inherent issues with that. Ponding water is probably the second biggest thing that we see on a roof, of a low sloped roof. There really should not be standing water on a low sloped roof. A little bit is okay. A lot can be more of a problem. This particular roof probably has a host of issues going on with it. We can kind of see there's some ponding water on each side, one little orphan kind of a pond over there, and then one where we have a whole lot of vegetation growing out of a roof drain, and that's probably causing some stoppage of that roof drain. And the problem with standing water on a low slope roofing membrane like this is that it will eventually work itself into the building. And we want to try to drain that water off as quickly as possible and not let it sit and start to find other ways to get inside the building. Damaged shingles and flashing, another very common, and damage can come from a lot of different avenues. It can come from wind and storm type of damage. It can come from just plain deterioration. The most roofing degradation that we see is caused by the sun. I mean, it makes sense, right? Our roofs are just exposed and sitting out in the sun all day long for years and years and years. And that does take its toll on the roofing membranes. The materials will start to degrade. Shingles will start to lose their um, the grit that they have will start to lose that and fill up gutters. Roofing membranes will start to lose their plasticizers and start to do some funky things that we'll see here in just a minute. But bad flashing, bad shingles, it's just a path for water to infiltrate inside of a building. Membrane shrinkage, as you know, as I just mentioned, that a lot of times after years of being exposed to the sun and UV, the things that keep the material soft and supple start to dry up, and we start getting shrinkage in the membrane. As you can see, this sort of looks like the surface of the desert, right? But the membrane is actually shrinking and it's pulling away. And when that happens, it pulls away from the edges and becomes very taut. It's already brittle by that point in time for as many years as it's been out in the sun. So it's very easy to get small tears and punctures. And we start to see all kinds of roof issues with leaks and water infiltrating a building. Clogged gutters and roof drains, and it's can come from a variety of different things. Not having a leaf guard on a gutter will cause it to fill up with leaves, so it will stop up. This water will eventually start backing up and working its way into an attic space. For a roof drain on a low sloped roof, it does not take much material. You can see there's only a small bucket full of pine needles there that are causing that drain to be completely stopped up. And all it takes is a quick sweep up there with maintenance and to pull that away. And this roof would be drained off in a matter of a few minutes. Storm damage, we're seeing a lot of this as we get um, more heavy duty storms across the U.S. and it can come from wind, damage to the shingles where the tabs will actually start to break off and fly away. We see it from hail that's coming down and causing punctures and damage. And we already said that roof materials have a tendency to get very brittle over time when they start getting beat up with Mother Nature and wind and hail. We can also have some real problems there as well. Overgrown trees. This one is kind of a double-edged sword. We have trees, large limbs that can fall onto a roof and cause damage. They also have a tendency to shade roofing areas, and we'll start getting some microbial and moss plant growth on roofs in these shady areas like this. So you can potentially get some deterioration of the roofing materials from just from the overgrown trees. So it's obviously recommended to trim those back as much as possible away from the roof. Poor ventilation, particularly in buildings with attic spaces. Roofs need to breathe. They can't be sealed up tight because moisture will work its way into a space, which is not always a problem if proper ventilation is there and it's allowed to dry back out. But you really need those air currents in order to get in there and circulate and dry out those materials. If we start to seal up these roofs and don't have good ventilation, air stagnates. We start to see mold growing on the back of sheathing like this. And this is one of those issues where you could have this growing in an attic space for a long period of time, and until somebody realizes it. And a lot of times, by the time you find it, it's a gigantic problem. Human error. Believe it or not, that's a lot. We see this a lot, and it kind of comes in a couple of different flavors. Everything from no maintenance to poor maintenance on a roofing membrane, just allowing it to kind of deteriorate. improper repairs that weren't done by a professional. It was done by, a handyman that said he could get up there and fix it and tar it up. It'll be as good as new. And poor installation. There are just contractors that are installing materials in a very poor workmanlike manner. So these are the things that we see as quite common issues as we travel the world and look at multifamily buildings all over. Roofing inspections, what can we do to sort of start to build a maintenance program for a roof if you don't have one already? The first thing I can tell you is you got to think about safety first. Ladders are no joke. I know a lot of people that have a lot of long-term health issues from falling off of ladders. So if you're not comfortable with the ladder, you're not comfortable with heights, roofs and ladders are not your thing. So leave it to the professionals to do that if you're not comfortable with that. The first thing that you want to do when doing any kind of a roof inspection is to perform a visual inspection of the roof. If it's a low slope roof, get up and walk around, take a look. Does anything look like it's wrong at this point in time? Are there materials or flashing or cappings? Are they loose? Any penetrate, any plumbing penetrations that are coming through, or are they flashed up good? Is water able to stay out of those? Those are the first and foremost things that we want to take a look at when surveying any roof. Check the roof drainage, see what's going on. If you're seeing ponding water up on a roof, get up there and clear out those roof drains. A lot of times it's just leaves and pine needles and debris that's causing them to back up. Get up there once in a while, periodically, and clean all of that out and get that roof draining again. Especially clear off any vegetation. Anything with roots is bad for a roof membrane. You don't want anything rooting downward into a membrane. You want that to be clear. And that goes for moss too. Moss is not as big of a problem as some of the weeds and even some of the really aggressive trees like dogwoods are very aggressive spreaders and will grow on anything. You start to see those, clean them off immediately. Look for nails and screws lying loose. This is one of the biggest things that we see. Maintenance people, HVAC tech guys that are up there working on things are not always the most careful people in the world, and will leave screws and nails laying around. And all it takes is stepping on one to put a hole in a membrane before we start having leaks on a building. They make specialized magnets on a pole that you can basically just walk around and sweep it with your hand and clean a lot of that up. It's a real easy thing to do. But I see more roofs that have all kinds of screws and nails on them that it just blows my mind sometimes.
Hmm. Hmm.
Sorry. Yeah.
Question for you.
Yes.
What would be a recommended series as people start to consider and how often they should inspect their roofs via whether it's a low sloped or a pitched roof? Is there any type of guidance you can
It
offer
depends on
on?
the scale a little bit of the roof. If you got a smaller roof, you might not have to get up there quite as often as if it's a larger roof. A good rule of thumb is that probably once a month you should be up on that roof, checking things out. Because the quicker that you find an issue, the quicker you can resolve something before it turns into a major catastrophe.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Remove vegetation. We talked about this. Roots bad. Anything that will root down into a membrane will cause issues in the future. Moss as well. Not quite as bad as vegetation, but will do damage over time. Vines. A lot of times we see overgrown vines that will come over a wall onto a roof. Those are also things that we want to make sure that we are getting rid of. If the roof is getting a little bit older, and you want to look at some ways that you might extend the life of a little bit, one of the things that you might want to consider is putting on a roof coating. There are a lot of different products that are available on the market today. You can go to Home Depot, Lowe's, Sherwin-Williams, you name it. You can go to any of these places and tell them what you want and come away with a coating that you can roll on, just like this lady is doing here. It rolls on like you're painting a wall, uh, but can do a lot of different things. Some of them can seal up some small holes, and extend the life of the roof. It's not going to be a miracle cure. You're not going to double the life of the roof, but if you need to get through for a little bit longer before you have the capital to replace that roof, this is something that I would take a look at. The other thing that is also very helpful, most of these coatings that you can put on the roof membrane are also reflective, which will reduce the amount of sunlight and heat that are entering the building, and reduce your heating loads, and be an energy savings for you. So you can kind of kill two birds with one stone sometimes with one of these reflective coatings.
And Nate,
Yes.
I just had a question that came through regarding apartment buildings, and I know you spoke to safety earlier on in your presentation about the
Yes.
ladders. As it relates to flat roofs, what types of railings are required? I know there are some things related to OSHA, but in your general knowledge and experience, what types of railings would you encourage those watching this presentation to utilize?
Well, there's a couple of different codes and laws that fall into place with this. Most flat roofs of a, let's just say a small 2 to 3 story building, you are not going to have a railing around a building. Now, where you do run into situations like that is if there is serviceable equipment, and by that I mean HVAC equipment, exhaust fans, heating, cooling units that are within 10 feet of the edge of the roof, then you need to have railings installed as a fall protection off of the building. Most buildings just plain do not have the railing, a deep parapet that would act as a railing, or a metal guardrail type of a railing. You just don't find that on most small buildings unless you've got a situation like I just said where you got equipment that needs to be serviced. Then that's in the mechanical code where they tell you need fall protection that's close to the rail. So unfortunately, there's not as much protection built into the building codes as one would hope.
So, one more question that came through regarding coatings. And there has been, at least in my area, and I'm mid-Atlantic, and
Mhm.
and I'm hearing about coatings that can be applied to shingle roofs to extend the lifespan. Is there any information that you can share with us today related to that particular type of treatment?
I have not done too much in the realm of coating shingles. However, I'd be happy to look into that, and so we can put something in the slide deck here when it gets distributed, or in the notes that might be a good material for that. I haven't had an instance where I've looked into that before in the past, but I do. I think the person who asked that question is right. I think there are some coatings that are out there, but I need to look at it a little bit and get you some better information.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. So when do we need to call in a professional? When is it beyond what we can do in terms of maintenance? First and foremost, when you notice a leak. By the time you notice a leak, you've probably got some issues that should have been dealt with some time ago. Um, they are the ones that could come in, identify where the issue is, and figure out a plan in order to get it fixed. Unfortunately, with roofs, particularly when remember we talked about the built-up roofing that's multiple layers of materials. Roof leaks can be very deceiving in a building. You might be in one room and look up and see a leak above your head, but the actual source of where that water is getting in might be 15 or 20 feet away from where it is. And that's due to that kind of buildup and that makeup of layers where the water is actually traveling around before it finds an outlet to get into the building. So it's not quite as simple as finding where the leak is and then looking directly on top of that. It gets much more complicated than that sometimes. You're going to also want to call in a professional if you suspect that you have hail damage. That can be an entirely different animal in terms of the damage that you have, and a lot of times will you're potentially into an insurance claim at that point in time if you are unfortunately have one of these episodes. Some of the specialty inspections that the professionals can do that most building owners can't. Um, Thermal imaging of a roof is one way to tell a couple of different things. It can help to spot areas where you are getting, where there is water getting in underneath the membrane. It can also help to find areas where you have bad insulation. It will show up in a thermal imaging camera, but it takes a trained thermographer who has some specialty certifications that can do that, because there are some things that can be deceiving, and these images need to be read properly. And this can be done a variety of different ways too. There are handheld thermal imaging cameras that can be used. There's also technology that can be used with drones. The thermal imaging on drones that will come through on roofs that are either not able to be accessed or maybe not safe enough. You can send some different technology up to take a look at what the problem might be. Coring samples. This is a destructive method of testing where we're actually taking a cutter and we're cutting down through all of the different layers of the roof to see what's going on in there. And basically what we're looking for is to see, is there water saturation that's in there? Are these materials dry? Or has water been getting in here? And sometimes the only way that you can tell is to do a destructive test like this. It's kind of one of the last types of inspections that you want to do because it is a destructive test. You are cutting another hole into the roof, so it needs to be done by a professional and sealed up properly so you're not exacerbating any problems that you might have up there. Replacement considerations when you do get to the point where you're thinking about a new roofing membrane. What do you want to take into consideration? First and foremost, choose the best qualified contractor with the best reputation that you can find. Research and see what industry certifications that they have. Have they been in business for a long time? And buy the longest warranty available by the manufacturer. But those kind of go hand in hand, right? You want to make sure that you chose a good contractor when you're buying a long warranty, because you want to make sure that company is going to be in business down the road when you may have a problem that needs to be taken care of. In fire-prone areas, you may want to consider a more fire-resistant roofing material. We've seen a lot of in California pitched roofs that have gone from an asphalt type of a shingle, which is fairly fire resistant in itself, but more to a clay tile. It's more expensive, but certainly much more fire resistant. So those are some considerations that you want to take into account when it is time to replace that roofing membrane. The last thing I kind of wanted to talk with you a little bit about today is some emerging roof technologies. Particularly, we're seeing this in multifamily, more so on the low-income housing tax credit side of the equation. Most of the state housing agencies are offering points. All these tax credit applications are point-based. The more points that you score, the higher the chances are the developer is going to receive the tax credits. But sustainability has been a hot button issue for the state housing agencies for a long time. So in the multifamily world, we're seeing more of a push for a green vegetative roofing than in a lot of other areas, market rate and luxury. We don't see it as much there. A green and vegetative roof, more than just being something pretty to look at, is really kind of best thought of as a tool, a multifaceted tool. Um, Green and vegetative roofing can help with stormwater issues. It's a roofing system that's actually using the stormwater that falls on the roof rather than just draining it off to the side. We're reducing an effect called the urban heat island effect, where if we have just materials that bake in the sun all day, think of how hot a dark asphalt parking lot is all day long after baking in the sun. Same thing happens with roofing materials. We get this and then it radiates that heat back out at night. By having these vegetative roofs, we're cutting that down so that the energy from the sun is actually being used to grow the plants and not overly artificially heat the environment. Typically, green roofs come in two different styles. They have what's called an intensive green roof and an extensive green roof. An extensive green roof is a thinner system, typically less than 5 inches, and that includes the plants and the growth medium that they grow in. An intensive green roof can be anything above 6 inches, so and several feet. There are several, there are a lot of green roofs in Chicago that are multi-feet. But the problem is that all of that all of that material weighs a lot of it's heavy and it weighs on that roof. So you have to size the roof appropriately in order to put it in. These days of the extensive systems, which is the more common system that you see on the market, there are really two types of systems that we see inside of that. There are companies now that are creating these grow in place, or I'm sorry, the tray systems where everything is grown, and these trays come in a module. Typically, it's a 2 foot by 2 foot module or a 3 foot by 3 foot module. They're pre-grown, they're all ready, and they just set in. You can kind of see this roof that we see in this picture kind of looks like a patchwork quilt almost. But this would be a tray system where those modules were all grown and brought in separately and set on the roof, all as one continuous piece. The other type of system that you see is what we call a grow in place system, where all of the different layers and components are brought in, and then the growth medium or soil is brought in on top of that, and then plants are planted and they grow. The one advantage that the tray systems have to the grow in place systems is that you can pick up these modules and move them to the side if you ever do need to access that roof membrane. They typically sit like a hat on top of the roof. They're still draining underneath it, and it sits there. But you can move them, and roof maintenance is a little bit easier. They're a little bit more expensive than the grow in place systems, but sometimes just from a maintenance standpoint, they're worth it. Um, I think I've run through just about everything that I wanted to go through today. Are there any other questions that you guys would like me to answer for you?
All right, looks like I've got one that came in early on. I want to get this one answered,
Sure.
related to how expensive is it to replace a roof when there are solar panels?
Ooh, that's a very good question. It depends on the solar panel, how the solar panels are installed. The very smart solar panel, the more modern, later panels that are on the market, they have really been designed in order to be a very light touch on the roof. They're able to be disassembled and moved, um, and gotten out of the way. There are some older systems out on the market that are much more rigid and much more labor intensive in order to try to take apart and move. It's just how the industry has evolved through the years. Everybody's kind of realized that, yeah, there's problems with solar panels up there. I would say, it's a little bit of a tough question to answer because it kind of depends on how old the system is. If it's a newer system, yeah, it's going to add some expense to the roof because now you're going to have to get your electricians involved in conjunction with the roofers and work together. So yeah, I mean, you might have a significant increase there. I wouldn't say double, but it's probably it's an additional cost anyways.
One other question that has come in, how do you assess when a roof has reached its end of life period prior to those leaks appearing?
This is a point. This is where when we talked about, when we call in the professionals, this is certainly an area where you want to have a professional evaluate it and give you their opinion of how many years that the roof has left to live. And I think at this point, if you have a roof that's sort of marginal in age, it's not leaking yet, um, but getting to the point where it would need to be replaced, I think that is a good case or a good time where I would want to do a core, what we talk the coring assessment on the roof, where we're actually cutting into it to see that there aren't any hidden problems that are down in there. And if they're not, there are some other ways that some ways that we talked about that you could extend the roof a little bit with a roof coating or another like product that puts on it. You can kind of baby it through a little bit, but it's certainly something you would want a professional's opinion on and not take a guess because you could guess wrong because there could be issues that you can't see that are hiding away.
Okay. I guess the last thing that I would, well, not the last thing, I guess I would ask other questions, but one of the things that I do find in my travels is with the folks being able to make sure that their contracts are solid. And just kind of speaking to one of my most recent experiences, I had a situation where we went on the roof, and after it had been replaced and there were defects. Um, so I would say to those that are in the audience, make sure that you have good contracts in place. You have the right professionals, and they've been vetted appropriately to do your work, as well as those solid contracts that would speak to anything that could potentially happen after that replacement. And the owner of this particular structure did have to have them come back to redo some work as there were places that had problems.
Yeah, and to that I would also add understand what the warranty is because there are roofing warranties that are written out there that are prorated where you're only going to get so much money back based on the age of the materials. And yeah, you may have a 20-year long roofing warranty, but if it's 19 years, you're not going to get much help if you start to get some failure because it's prorated. So understand what it is that you're getting into in terms of the warranty. What is the worst case scenario that you as a building owner are gonna face in terms of having to pay for having to do a major capital outlay for something that is unforeseen.
So with what you just said, would it be uh, something that where you would have the prospective contractor provide a warranty, I guess the details of their warranty ahead of selecting them as your final contractor, so you kind of understand in detail what you're in for after the installation?
Absolutely. You can ask any major manufacturer can provide a blank a copy of a warranty for you to take a look. It's not going to be filled in. It's not going to be signed by your roofing contractor until it's complete. But you can, it's perfectly within your rights to ask for that and have that and take a look at it. So you can kind of start to understand, and ask questions about where this could head down the road. And there are one warranty doesn't fit all. I mean, you can negotiate with a manufacturer, with a contractor, if there are some things that you don't like, that you see that you don't like in the contract. It's perfectly also within your right to negotiate.
Okay, last question, I guess, from you brought up earlier about technologies that are out there for dealing with roofs. Have you found positives or negatives with the increased use of the drone technology?
Drone technology is great. The thermal imaging cameras have come leaps and bounds, from when it was introduced just a few years ago, and now DJI is probably leading the charge with that. They have some thermal imaging cameras that are absolutely magnificent, but they need to be operated and interpreted by, those images need to be operated, by someone who's a thermographer that can understand those images, because it's too easy to misread them if you're not a professional. And anybody can go buy a drone or borrow a drone to take a look at a roof, but to really understand what's going on takes some professional expertise.
It looks like we're coming up on our window of leaving this fantastic uh, session. Does anyone have any other question? Up, let's see here. It looks like I might have one.
All right.
Um,
We love questions.
what are your thoughts on fortified roofing?
I honestly don't have much experience with it. It's just not in this area in Michigan. It's not a very common roofing practice, and I honestly can't speak to it very well. It's because it's just not something that we use around, we do around here.
Yeah. All right. All right. I would assume that everyone has had an opportunity to express a question. Uh, Mr. Gillette, we want to thank you for coming and spending time with us today. We truly
Absolutely. Thank you
appreciate the
for having me.
knowledge that you've dropped on us.